think what you find in the United States is there are there are schools of thought. And one school has rallied around the idea of what you call harm reduction, treating drug consumption as a medical, as a psychological, as a social phenomena, and sort of trying to distance itself from the criminal associations and activities. And the idea being, well, if we attack the problem as a health problem, then we can sort of wean ourselves away from this consumption. Let's put our resources primarily on health and prevention. And then there's the other school that says, well, if we let our guard down and we have these criminal organizations who are good at marketing, distributing, getting the goods into the country, if they become more available, people will continue to push upon the vulnerable, the young, those who are ready and to experiment, will make it actually easier. So if you let your guard down. So there's kind of this constant debate, this constant tension. Now, my personal view and what I try to write about is I think that you need a full spectrum approach to dealing with the drug issue. Going around and sort of sloganizing issues and saying war on drugs has failed, therefore let's devote all our resources to domestic issues, I think then opens up and enlarges the space for criminal operations. So I think that you need a continued pressure on source countries, you need continued interdiction, you need law enforcement in the United States, particularly to go after drug dealers and cartels, and you also need adequate money for everything from publicity to drug courts to treatment. And so there's a whole sort of coalition of people who don't like the war on drugs. And in fact, the current drug czar, Mr. Kurlikowski, said there is no war on drugs because it means that we are making a war on the American people. So again, semantics, word choices, and yet we continue to pursue, under the Obama administration, a fairly aggressive strategy of supporting Plan Colombia, of trying to support Central America and the Caribbean, which are under security threat, which is largely by drugs, and by the Merida Plan, which is trying to support Mexico as it goes through a period of increased narcotics-related violence. Mm-hmm. I think the public consensus for the most part in the United States is opposed to any drastic liberalization, even down to marijuana. However, there are certain pockets, and this is where states will come into play, like, but how far do you go? Is it do you stop at marijuana? Do you move on to other sorts of drugs? It is highly complex, and each sort of group or voice stakes out a position, because why are they staking out these positions? Because they, one, want to influence the laws that govern the land, the laws regarding the consumption and use of narcotics. They want to influence practices in law enforcement, practices in prisons, and also um they are vying, there are voices that are looking for federal monies and other monies that go into counter-drug efforts. So they want to sort of steer the monies, the public monies, which I think runs somewhere around, and it hasn't, we've stayed pretty much stable. I think it's around total of about $15 billion that goes into both international and domestic drug consumption issues. And under the Obama administration, you've seen a little bit of a shift of monies toward the domestic side and a little bit away from the international side. First of all, you've got to have an illegal market. The kids who start experimenting are usually teenagers and so on. So you've got to be 21. It's going to be like having a beer. So first of all, it's going to be a massive illegal market for teenagers still, who's going to get them their marijuana? The presumption is that the illegal dealers will then undercut that market, will continue to supply and sell the market. How are you going to tell, how are you going to tell whether this marijuana came from illegal? I mean, you're going to have a stamping system? Are they going to be packaged in a way? Are you going to have a chemical trace in there? How are you going to tell which is legal and illegal marijuana? So, of course, marijuana apparently still constitutes about 60% of the drug revenues that go to the cartels, so it's a billion-dollar industry, and those guys aren't going to let this industry just go down the tubes because there are a few little legal shops around. I mean, You know, it could increase health costs because people do things while impaired with marijuana, like drive or operate machinery or so forth and so on, just as with alcohol. It would increase the use. I think people would say, you know, let's experiment and let's try it out. Now it's, you know, now I can do it. I'm free. Some will start using it. I don't think it's going to work as a social experiment because it is going to transfer, and it's going to basically make it easier to use drugs, and I think it's going to create a permissiveness that sometime or another is going to sort of come back and haunt us. Mm-hmm. What they want to do is they want to technically move from what was called sort of hard side assistance, which is like giving police in other countries helicopters, and they want to shift to institution building, reform of judicial systems. Another thing that's popular, it's expensive, is instead of fumigating, aerial spraying, to move to alternative development. So, I mean, there are certain things within the drug war paradigm that are favored by liberal Democrats. And this is the constant debate in Washington. If you look over that way towards the Capitol and the Senate office buildings, the House office buildings, that's where public policy is formed in this ongoing debate about strategies and how do we take the mix of public resources that we devote to these strategies, and are we going to shuffle them around, or are we going to what's going to be the sort of the point of our emphasis? And I think that under the Obama administration, the shift away is sort of from the hard to the softer side, from the international a little bit more to the domestic, but it's not completely changing the mix.